Hi, my name's Ben and I'm a data engineer at Quintessence. Today we're going to be looking at reports that generate specific factors. Now, if we go to the report screen, we'll see we previously have talked about reports that calculate return, and that could also be considered a specific factor, but we're going to be looking at a report that calculates weight. Now, in the past, we've also created a top 10 weights report, and so the first couple steps are going to be relatively similar. I'm going to start by looking for my portfolio. I'm going to go get some market values. That's going to be my underlying data. I'm going to copy this function. I'm going to go to a report. I'm going to create a new report. And I'm going to name this report weights report. Now I'm going to add some parameters I know I'm going to need. I'm going to want a portfolio input. I'm going to want a start date input. I'm going to want an end date input. I go to my configuration and we can say raw data colon, paste my function in my line, and to start we can go and change our portfolio 1 to portfolio and our start date and our end date to start date and end date. Now if I go and put in some test parameters here so that I can see what's happening, I'll make this one March 2011, 15 March 2011. I can hit execute and make sure I am getting data back. Now, calculating weight is a relatively straightforward calculation if you know the group by function. So the group by function is one of our utility functions, and I'm going to say group by, my raw data is my input, and I'm interested in grouping on the portfolio because I might send in more than one portfolio at a time. I'm also interested in grouping by the date, so I'm going to want to be summing according to dates as well because I send more than one date in, then I need to sum down as well. And then the lowest level of grouping I'm interested in is the actual stocks in the portfolio. So I'm having that as the third grouping, column 2. Now I'm interested in column 5 to get my weight. So my weight is going to be column 5 divided by the sum of everything in the portfolio for a certain day. So that's a sum of the first two groupings, right? So the way to do that would be to say C5 divided by sum. And now I want the second grouping, so I'm going to say G2, and that means second grouping C5. All right. So this will give me weights per day per stock inside the portfolio. And if I click execute, I can see a whole bunch of weights. And I could probably do another group by in order to check this. I'm going to say check weights, and this is purely going to be temporary. I'm going to say group by on weight. And we know that weights on a particular day always add up to 1. So I'm going to group on the portfolio and date, and I'm going to say sum of C4. So this will give me the sum of my output here, and that should be 1 per day. When I hit execute, I see there is a 1 per day. So that's great. My weights are adding up to 1. I'm fairly sure this calculation is right, but this check really cements for me the fact that this is the correct calculation. So I'm going to comment this out, and we're going to leave it just like that. So I can hit execute, and here we go. I've got weights for portfolio 1. Now I can save this, I can go to Excel, I can go and call this as well. And now wherever anyone is, they are able to get back their weights from a portfolio. And they could do it for any portfolio they're interested in, but we'll just set up the little example here. And we're going to say equals report. And we had weights report was the name of the report. We've got to have our portfolio, and then our start date, and then our end date. And when we hit enter, we should get back our results if we saved the report correctly. So there we go, we've got our weights. Now if we go and select perhaps the first couple lines, just for the first day of this range, we'll see the sum is equal to 1, so it looks like this report is coming back correctly. Now, what we've done so far is just create a report that calculates something for us. But ideally, what we'd want to do is actually have the weight available through the time series function, or in this case, it wouldn't be a time series function, it would be a relationship data function. But we haven't done that yet. But we have a very specific tool that we can use to do exactly that, and that's called the custom source. Now, if I go to Quintessence and I go to custom sources, we'll see that we can click on relationship series, so we can create a custom source for relationship data. And there's a whole lot more to custom sources than there are to reports. And that's because custom sources are all about fitting in a custom calculation into the data model. So there's going to be all this mapping between, hey, how does this data fit into our data model? So the name is going to be the name of the source. We've got this equation block, all right, which is very similar to a report equation block, except all the variables are parameters that are available in the relationship data function. So I can put in an entity and a relationship and a time series, and this will be where we put in weight. But what's more than that is our equation can start taking into account if we're looking at weight for different attributes, or weight with different units, or any number of different things that we might want to adjust depending on other extra inputs that we might want to have in order to get slightly different weights. Now, this is very, very useful when you want to do things such as weights with carve-outs, where you can add extra rules inside your equation, or just weights on a range of portfolios all at once where you need them available using the relationship data function. Now, one of the last steps of a custom source would also be to say, all right, we've got our block of data, and we say this is the parent column, the child column, the time series column, and the value column, and the value date column. And it's just a very useful way of mapping a block of data into the database so that when we go back to Excel, we can say equals relationship data, and we'd be able to say portfolio 1, constituent, and we'd be able to say weight and actually get data back. Because weight isn't currently in the system, but we can make it in the system by using a custom source, which is essentially a report that generates a specific factor and fits it into the data model. Now, we're going to have another video on building a weights custom source specifically. So go and watch that video if you're interested in this topic, and it should help you in understanding how custom sources work and what they do.